Well, we just witnessed one of the greatest football games you will ever watch. The Carolina Panthers taken down by the Chicago Bears in an NFL draft game, which the Bears own both picks. And today was a good day for them. They win the game. They make the Carolina Panthers record worse. We will dive into Bryce Young. It's not looking great. And Frank, Google Tepper's record of firing coaches. I would say he's in some trouble. And the Bears, why it feels like firing Matt Eberflus is inevitable, and why that is going to be a very, very attractive job, as well as Belichick half naked, leaving a home. Some thoughts on some games this weekend. And yeah, we'll talk some football coming up. So make sure you subscribe to 3 and Out Podcast, wherever you may listen. Apple, iTunes, Spotify. We have you covered. Content every day of the week. Nonstop podcast during the football season, as well as this YouTube channel. Hammer that like button. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to the page. Share with your friends. Share with your enemies. As you can see, I'm rocking this 3 and Out hat. If you go to a little place called thevolume.com, and you search the merch, we have FlexFit hats. We have trucker hats. All the different shows have merch, so go check that out. And before we dive into the number 1 overall quarterback, Bryce Young, I need to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. What I need you to do is I need you to grab your smartphone. We all have them. Go to your app store and download a little application known as Gametime. Do you want to go to a game? Are you a Bears fan? Do you want to watch your team get hot? Go outside, enjoy a game. Are you a college football fan? Do you want to go? I saw the Pac-12 championship game already sold out. Well, guess what? Gametime, secondary market. You want to go to Vegas? Oregon, Washington? You want to watch that game, which feels inevitable? The rematch, part 2? Well, go to Gametime, download the app, sign up for your first pair of tickets, and use the promo code John. That's my name. Promo code John, and get $20 off. So do it right now. Gametime, download the app, promo code John. Do it. Get $20 off first pair of tickets. Let's dive into the game. And I want to start with the Carolina Panthers. And this is what makes scouting very difficult. Because you see things in college, whether it's Division II Shepherd College. That guy went to the Senior Bowl. And I texted people today in the NFL. I'm like, do you think everyone had a write-up? And they're like, yeah, he went to the Senior Bowl. People were on this guy. And then you get guys that win the Heisman Trophy that start quarterback, and everyone's, sending their GMs into Alabama. And you really like a guy. I really liked Bryce Young in college. I thought he was tough. I thought he was just a natural at playing the position. His instincts, his ability to read defense. He was just a really, really good player. But one conversation about him leading into the draft, which I think is the most concerning part if you're the Carolina Panthers, and the thing that has to keep you up at night, is he looks beyond small. I mean, you can't get any smaller. He's literally the smallest quarterback that's ever going to be drafted that high in the history of the league. And moving forward, that's never going to happen again. He looks like he weighs 150 pounds. And that was a huge point of conversation with the player, because ultimately the NFL is full of massive players that can all run really fast. Like, did you see Montez Sweat? You see the size and speed of these guys? Jalen Johnson, the corner for the Chicago Bears, outweighs and has Bryce Young by several inches. He's a DB, the corner. So size matters. And you watch that game and you go, one, from a skill set standpoint, it's not like he has the greatest arm. It's not like he's the fastest player. And he's just minuscule out there. I found this picture back when Muggsy Bogues, it was ironic because the Charlotte Hornets, or the Charlotte Hornets were playing the Chicago Bulls, just like tonight. And Muggsy and Michael Jordan has the ball and he's palming it because Michael had those huge hands, and he's looking down at Muggsy, who's basically at his drawstrings. And that's what Bryce Young looks like. A tiny little football player. But it'd be one thing if you're small and you have unreal skill set, right? Like a Kyler Murray, very small player, elite speed, elite arm. He's also much thicker of an athlete than Bryce. I texted a scouting director. I said, what was the best case for Bryce for the people that were high on him in the league? And they thought he had some Russell Wilson qualities. And you saw that flash toward the end of the game. If you were watching, don't blame me if you weren't. That's why I watched for the podcast to talk about the game, is scrambling around, making throws on the run. But the difference between Bryce and Russell, because remember, Russell, that rookie year, wasn't some guy that you thought was going to be, a Hall of Fame level player. But Russell was built like a tank. Russell Wilson weighed 220 pounds. Like, you don't need to be an NFL scout to look at Bryce in the huddle or standing there next to NFL players and go, does he weigh 165 pounds? I mean, honestly, with pads on, does he weigh 200 pounds? I know he weighed 200 pounds at the combine, but as an assistant GM told me, if you were in that room when he weighed in, it looked like he waddled up to the scale. And once that was over, he basically ran to the bathroom, whether to go to the bathroom, throw up, but it was all fake weight. It was 15, 20 pounds of not real pounds. And you're talking about a guy that people think at Alabama, he played in the low 170s. And listen, he's a really talented player. It's why he won the Heisman Trophy. It's why he started at Bama immediately after Mac Jones left. But sometimes how you are in college, and this is what makes scouting such an inexact science, doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL. Because you would have said this guy from Shepherd College tonight probably be a big scrub, and everyone's making fun of him. And you go Bryce Young, Alabama, #1 overall pick. But when you watch the two of their skill sets, I would still take Bryce over him, but the gap isn't that wide. But when you put it relative to the skill set of some of the guys just drafted high in his draft, I know Anthony Richardson has banged up and is out for the season, but they're not comparable at all. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is a dramatically better player. And then Will Levis, who is now the starter in Tennessee, has a top 5 arm immediately in the NFL. So I just don't know what his point of difference is as a player moving forward. And the other thing is, for him to be a good player, movement and scrambling, and I don't even mean running, because he's not, I know he had some runs tonight. He's not Lamar Jackson, Kyler. That's not really his game. He'd be much more similar, and I'm not comparing him to this player. I'm just saying, like, the way he'll play would be more like a Mahomes, or like I said, a younger Russell Wilson, where you scramble to throw. But if he gets hit at that size, there's going to be a point in time where he doesn't get, there were a couple times tonight where he just ran into sacks. God, is he going to be okay? He got up, but one of these times, these guys are outweighing him by 140 pounds. If a defensive tackle falls on him and he's 180 pounds and that guy's 330 pounds, you do the math. I mean, there's a reason that heavyweights aren't allowed to fight lightweights. That's the thing in the NFL. Size matters. Size matters in sports. There are outliers, right? Jose Altuve is an outlier. Tim Lincecum, when he was winning Cy Youngs, is an outlier. Most elite starting pitchers, most elite starting NBA basketball players, most elite starting NFL players have good to above average size relative to their position. And this guy does not. He's literally the smallest player we've ever seen at that position. And he got drafted #1 overall. And just on the eye test, and listen, the pick sixes last week, and he had 7 picks coming in this game, whatever. It just doesn't look right. And part of that, I had someone with the Eagles text me. They're like, God, Frank has aged 20 years, it looks like, since we won the Super Bowl in 2018 or 17. He just doesn't look great, right? I don't think he's coaching very well. Are we sure Frank Reich is any good? And someone sent me this screenshot. I guess Pat McAfee had talked about David Tepper's recent firings. And, he gets the job. Rivera's the coach. Fires Rivera and makes Perry Fuel the interim. Fires him after the season. Just fired Matt Rule. Then Steve Wilkes fired him after the season. Like, this guy has unlimited money and things are not going well. So to think that this team is just going to go, let's say 2-15, and Frank is like just going to keep his job, I don't think that's a lock by any means. It's not like you hired a guy with some extensive resume of winning at a really high level. He's an offensive coach. You just drafted this guy #1 overall, and he looks pitiful. He looks awful. He looks like we are screwed for the foreseeable future. And obviously the trade that you had to make to do that, I think the Carolina Panthers are in big, big trouble. And if Bryce was ever going to maximize whatever ability that is, and I'm not trying to play, listen, I like Bryce Young. I thought he was a really good player in college. I'm pivoting off that take. I would not want him as my quarterback based on what we've seen. And I don't see how anyone would agree. If you sat Dave Tepper and Frank down right now, they would have to take those other 3 quarterbacks over this guy. And I know Herb Street likes him because he calls these Bama games and tried to be bullish and positive. But it's like, come on, guys. I mean, there's a level of like, hey, there's some stuff to work with. And God, I don't see anything. Average to below arm, not great movement, tiny. Coach who doesn't know what he's doing, no skill around him, awful offensive line, no skill position because you traded DJ Moore. I think Carolina is headed for, just way more problems. And when you have an owner who's new to pro sports and who has all this money, it's usually going to get a lot uglier before they figure this out. So sucks to be a Panther fan. Well, it sucks to be a Bears fan because your team also stinks. I mean, you had to play at home on a short week, Carolina Panthers, and you win by 3 points. Now, granted, your starting quarterback's out. To me, if Justin Fields there, I think you win that game by a touchdown or maybe 10 points. Like, you're a better team. You have legitimate players, right? You had DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson. Listen, I don't love the sweat trade or the amount of money you gave him, but he's a clear upgrade for a team that had 10 sacks coming into this game and 5 of them had come in one game. I do think Eberflus has got to go, and I do think he's going to go. And to me, the only question with the Bears is who's going to be the coach in 2024, and is Ryan Poles going to be allowed to hire that coach? Because the last go-around, the Bears, and listen, the league office, the more and more, I'm lucky to know some of these guys in front offices, and you talk to them. The league loves to get their hands in everything and place people to help people out. And in fairness, some owners have no clue what they're doing and ask the league for help. So you get all these people in the league who don't know anything about running a football team. They just know how to monetize the league. So you got a lot of, hands in the cookie jar. And the last time the go around, the reason Eberflus is there is because Bill Polian played a huge role, right? Bill Polian has nothing to do with the Bears, but he's like integrated inside the league. And listen, and his resume speaks for itself. But in 2023, I'm sorry, I'm not asking Bill Polian for advice who to hire as my head coach. And Eberflus is clearly over his head. Honestly, he looks terrible. Dude needs to get a tan. Maybe tough to see the sun right now in Chicago, but looks awful. The Bears have a lot going for them, to me, this offseason. One, they're going to have the number 1 pick because of Carolina. That trade worked out really well. And then depending on where they end up drafting, 3 to 7 or 8, they're going to have another really high pick. And they do have some young, ascending, legitimate impact players. Like I said, the corner, the pass rusher, and obviously DJ Moore. So you hit on a quarterback, you hit on another impact player, maybe an offensive lineman, maybe another defensive lineman, just one of the best players in the draft, and you get a real coach. Like, you go hire Jim Harbaugh because that's what this job needs. I'm watching tonight and I'm thinking, people in the NBA talk forever about like, only if the Knicks were good. The Knicks haven't been good since like the 90s. People do that all the time, right? Like, if only the league is better when the Raiders are good. Well, the league's never made more money the last 25 years, and the Raiders have not been good. So does it really matter that much? I don't think so. I actually don't think it matters at all. But in a perfect world, you would have your historic brands and your bigger markets be good, right? Like, the league wants the Giants to be good. The league wants the Bears to be good. And I think they would die for them to make a splashy hire like Jim Harbaugh. Now, the McCaskies, mom and pop shop level operation, never been big on spending much money, which I said it forever. I think being cheap when you have a shitload of money is a disease. I have no problem being cheap and frugal when you don't have much money or when you're building up your business. But when you're at the spot of all these owners, whether you're David Tepper or the McCaskey family, you're getting $400 million from the league alone. That's not accounting all the other revenue streams you have. You have an unlimited amount of money to go hire a coach for $15 million if you want. If you're not willing to do that, you deserve to get your fucking ass kicked with Matt Eberflus. So go out and pay a lot of money for a coach when you have a great opportunity to build up your team with these draft picks. And it would be cool because at points in time over the last 20 years, the Bears have been good. When I first got in the NFL, the Bears were good. They went to the NFC Championship game and they hosted it against the Packers. And before that, in the 2000s, with Lance Briggs and Urlacher and Peppers, like, they were a legitimate franchise, right? And they're just a fun operation to see because of the brand, because of the city. The city really cares that the franchise should matter. And they're kind of at their lowest point right now. Now, usually a GM gets multiple coaches, and whether Poles was the guy banging the table, he has been outspoken how much he likes them, how much they grew this offseason, but it's not working. You can't have this guy as your head coach. And now I think the only question mark is moving forward, like, Justin Fields is not going to be there, is who that guy's going to be. And really, it's going to come down to, are they willing to get into the deep end when it comes to money? Because if they're not, then you're just going to be an up-and-down franchise like you've been. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub. And with DraftKings parlays, everyone's got a shot at even bigger basketball wins. String together multiple bets from the same game or build your parlay across multiple games for a shot at making your payday even sweeter. Basketball's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JOHN. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5 only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. Let's dive into some other stuff. I personally, once a video becomes public, everyone gets to see it. But I do get uncomfortable sometimes when videos in private situations, like I don't know if you had a chance to see the Lane Kiffin video of him screaming at the kid for, not showing up for 3 weeks when he was texting him and calling him. And the kid's like claiming mental health, but the kid clearly has a thing in his pocket. Like, it was, I don't know if it's supposed to be a gotcha. It actually made Lane look kind of good, but like, he doesn't know he's being filmed. Like Belichick walking out of this house, everyone's assuming he's taking the walk of shame. While funny, I actually think he looks really good. I mean, I'm kind of a fat ass right now. If I would pay to look that good, when I was in my early 70s. So props to Belichick for staying relatively fit, especially, it's easier for taller guys. I was watching the CMAs last night, like Alan Jackson, who's in like his mid 60s, who's like 6'5". When you're tall, even as you get fat, you wear it better. When you're kind of short, stocky, like myself or Belichick, you get that extra 10 pounds can look bad. Props to Belichick for looking good. And listen, props to Belichick, like for just living his life. Let the man live, right? But my theory, and I could be wrong, I don't know much. I haven't read much into the story. I don't even know if there is a story, just the camera. I did run into another video, either from the summer or maybe training camp in New Orleans of him with a young girl. I do wonder if the crafts, like you have to look at football teams a lot like the mob. They will do things. They have a lot of connections. They just get access to a lot of things that even most businesses don't. And I wonder if they're starting to set out a little trail that, like, listen, it's not going to be easy to go our separate ways from William Belichick. But if we do it, we just want everyone to know, like, this guy's lost a little focus, not as dialed in as he once was. Obviously, the team's bad, but he's running amok out there. So that's a little theory I have. Maybe the crafts are involved with some of these video leaks on Bill. But I did see a story today, Florio wrote, about the potential of Bill going to Tampa Bay. Him and Jason Light have a history. Todd Bowles, listen, really good defensive coordinator, not a good head coach. I mean, not a good head coach at all. He's an elite defensive coordinator. He becomes a head coach. The defense gets worse. That's a telltale sign of just like, God, you are not meant for this position. And listen, if I was Tampa, I would be all over Bill. I think there has been other stories floating around about Washington and Bill. So all these videos can come out of him chasing girls in their 20s. Like, guess what? If you were if you were rich, single, and 71, and babes under 35 wanted to get with you, you would do the same thing. So let's give Bill a standing ovation, not try to belittle the guy's character on the web. But I do think Bill's going to have a lot of options. I don't care how shitty this season goes, unless I kind of think the Colts are going to beat them. I like that these international games, especially for those of us on the West Coast, much easier if you live on the East Coast and the game starts at 9:30. Like, you're already awake. You just keep it in the back. You don't have to focus. But like the Miami Chiefs game, like that was a big game for NFL standards just throughout the season. Like I had to get up no matter what. This game just doesn't matter. Is irrelevant to the grand scheme of things. I like it when the international games are this. It's like, yeah, you kind of pay attention. You don't really have to. No one at night after all the other games is going to discuss that game. Beside the big picture, if the Pats lose, this Belichick thing is only going to grow. And I think there are going to be several teams interested in him. And one thing I thought about this week, if they would trade him, I think this trade would be much more like, listen, you give us like a 5th-round pick. We don't even want him as our coach. Let Bill go somewhere else. Part of the Sean Payton thing, right? The reason they had to give up a 1 to get him in Denver was, do you think the Saints wanted to lose Sean Payton? You think the Saints wanted to go to Dennis Allen? Of course not. Sean was like, I quit. They're like, well, okay, but you're still under contract, and we're not just going to let you coach somewhere else. We get it. You need a little break, but we don't actually want Dennis Allen to be our coach. You're kind of leaving us high and dry. With Bill and the Crafts, it's like, yeah, we don't really want you here. Bill's prideful. I don't think he'd want to not be there, but it will be the best thing for him. And maybe he's too old. Maybe he's lost his fastball. Maybe he should hang up his whistle. Right when Andy went to the Chiefs, he was obviously dramatically younger than Bill will be when he goes to a new team. But I think Bill, for a guy in his 70s, as you see in that video of him, leaving, we don't know if it's a young lady's. It could have been like his cousin's house. Who knows? Maybe he's just leaving, lost his shirt, didn't know where he was going. But I do think Bill would be revitalized. And to me, there's something, anyone listening that's made a big professional change in their life, when you've been stuck in a rut, there is an energy that comes with a new job, with a new opportunity, with working with new people. It's like a natural caffeine boost to your body, because anyone who's been in a situation where, even if you've had success somewhere, if it's not going well, it can drain you, man. I've been there. I'm sure many people listening have been there. And then it's hard because you eventually got to wear it that you failed or you didn't have success. But a lot of people that have gotten bankrupt have bounced back and to bigger and brighter things, right? So I do think that Bill, if this team wins 3 or 4 games, which they feel destined to be, and is a coach somewhere else, could have a couple good years if he had a quarterback. And like we talked about, you can only be a good coach with a good quarterback. It's impossible. You can't. No one's winning with Mac Jones. You're just not. You can put Mac Jones on the 85 Bears and they would have some issues. So part of having a good team is having a good quarterback. You don't need a great quarterback. You can win with Alex Smith, not win big, but you can go to the playoffs every year with a serviceable, above average starter. But you have no chance to win with a guy that's in the bottom 10. You just don't. I mean, look at Carolina Panthers. Team sucks, but their quarterback's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Right? The Bears, same thing. And their team's better. But when your quarterback play is bad, you're just going to lose more often than you win. A couple teams this week who could kind of sneaky have some big muscle flex. I think 2 of the better games on Sunday are Lions against the Chargers. Chargers sneaky back. They're 4-4. They're playing pretty good football. Their defense actually been better. And the Jags against the Niners. Both these teams, if either one of them wins, they're 7-2 and look like they are on cruise control to win their division. But if the Lions go beat the Chargers, who are playing good football, and it's going to be a home game. I'm telling you, I said this to Coward weeks ago when you just pulled up their schedule. It's like they could win 14 games. It's not inconceivable that they could win 15. They've already won some of their tougher games. And if you win this, all of a sudden, Google their schedule kind of opens up. I do think they would be in the mix just based on their opponents to be the number 1 overall seed. And listen, we already acknowledged the Lions are good. The Lions are a good team. Are they a Super Bowl team? I wouldn't go that far, right? I wouldn't put them there. But they're really good. I would expect them minimum to win a playoff game and be a team that even in the second round could cause some headaches, right? But all of a sudden you start winning a game like this on the road against Herbert. I'm telling you, their dream to have several home playoff games is very much alive. And then the Jags and the Niners. And listen, the Niners have been beyond shitty the last 3 weeks. The last 2 weeks, defensively, they've been terrible. They're coming off a bye. They add Chase Young. I think a lot of people, if let's say they had won 2 of those games, hadn't been on a 3-game, they'd be like a 10-point favorite. Maybe not 10, but like a touchdown favorite in this game. So right now, they're a 3-point favorite, and that's with 3 straight losses to a team that's 6-2. And here's the thing with their defense. It's really struggled in terms of covering people. And one thing the Jags do well, a lot of weapons. Ridley, Kirk, Ingram. ETN is basically just a hybrid pass-catching running back. So I think this is going to be a sneaky tough spot for him. And this is going to be all eyes, Wilkes down to the booth. If that defense, are they going to get it together? Because this was defense early on in the season that just looked like they've looked the last couple of years. Now you're playing a quarterback. The other thing that sneaky gives the 49ers some trouble are quarterbacks, not necessarily like running quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, but guys who can scramble and keep plays alive. And that's Trevor Lawrence. So I don't know. I mean, I think if either one of these two teams wins, they're 7-2. We're talking about a 13 or 14 win season. And to me, if the Lions win 13, 14 games, the Detroit Lions, I don't see how Dan Campbell's not the coach of the year. Don't miss the action this weekend when the Colts and the New England Patriots head to Germany for the NFL Frankfurt games. These games will air on NFL Network and stream on NFL Plus. For a limited time, Verizon customers can get Netflix and NFL Plus for $25 a month with Plus Play. That's $120 in annual savings. Plus Play is a platform where Verizon customers can shop, manage, and save on the subscriptions you already love, like NFL Plus. With NFL Plus Premium, you get access to live games on mobile, NFL Red Zone, and NFL Network, which means you can catch the Frankfurt games and save. Just go to Verizon.com/thevolume to bundle and save before the games. Hurry, this offer ends soon. Again, that's Verizon.com/thevolume. Last but not least, I'm fascinated by this game because I think a couple years ago when John Gruden got fired in the middle of the season, right? Or it wasn't even the middle, it was like week 4 or 5. It was during Monday Night Football. I think the Ravens were playing. And by halftime, it was clear he was done. And Rich Bisaccia took over. And then a couple weeks later, Henry Ruggs kills the girl and her dog in his Lamborghini or whatever, or Porsche. It was a crazy time. And Rich Bisaccia, who was the interim head coach, not just handled it as a professional, but kept the train on the tracks. And that team made the playoffs. And there was a lot of internal support. Derek Carr, Max Crosby, all those guys wanted him to be their head coach. And Mark got John Gruden. And obviously, or not John Gruden, but he went with Josh McDaniels. And a lot of people thought that was the wrong move. A lot of people internally thought that he fucked up. And clearly looking back, I don't know if Rich would have been a good head coach. Perfect place, perfect time. But that is something that Mark Davis has not forgot. And obviously he just fires Josh McDaniels, who it is crazy. Every single day, I see something on the internet of one of their players kind of indirectly talking shit about how terrible Josh McDaniels was. You can't even make up how miserable the stories I've heard that it sounded in the building with this guy. It's just, it's crazy when you get a second opportunity and you know the issue that you had the first time and you just do the same thing over again. And it gets back to, I think you can change in life, but when you start going through tough times, it's easy to change when everything's going well and be a new guy, be a new person, right? Hell, as a golfer, it's easy on the driving range to change your golf swing. Well, what happens under pressure? What happens after you hit one out of bounds? You usually kind of freak out and resort back muscle memory. It's no different psychologically to the way we're wired. And what happened to Josh last year? Some terrible losses. And it got ugly, and it got ugly fast. Hell, he went there. He thought Tom Brady was going to come. They thought they were going to replace. Never thought Derek Carr was going to take a snap. And then Tom Brady didn't come, right? Went back to the Bucs for a year. So after the retirement, weird thing happened. So immediately it got off to a weird start, and everything backfired. And then he resorted back to exactly what he was. The muscle memory of his brain just became the asshole that no one could stand. And he couldn't overcome it as a scheme guy. Right, his schematics, because the talent on his team wasn't good enough. So he couldn't coach anybody, and everyone hated him. It became this powder keg, which happened. And then who's there? A lot like a Rich, a leader, a guy that everyone respects, which matters. And we see some guys in football who have that attribute who are awesome at their job. Like, watch the Steelers and watch the Ravens. Their head coaches don't do anything with offense, defense, or special teams. I'm not saying they don't influence or anything, but during a game, they don't call any of it. And a lot of times they're just there to call timeouts and scream at the refs. Watch Harbaugh and watch Tomlin. Hell, Campbell, a lot of guys are like that, but they are great leaders. I mean, Mike Tomlin is known as one of the greatest leaders in the history of the league. I think Dan Campbell feels like he's kind of becoming that. Whenever I watch Dan Campbell talk, I'm like, God, I don't want to play for this guy. This guy feels like, a dude that every guy in that locker room believes in. And that matters. And that's what I think Antonio Pierce definitely had as a player. And I think that's why Mark Davis pulled the trigger right now. Because I think his players were telling him, this guy's the opposite. This guy's done at the highest level. Give this guy a shot. So it was an easy one for Mark. And listen, why he gave him the opportunity to get the job is because he won. So Antonio Pierce got to win these games. And this is a good example. Sunday Night Football. Everyone watching. You're playing Zach Wilson. You're not playing Aaron Rodgers. You're not playing Joe Namath. You're not playing Vinny Testaverde. You're getting Zach fucking Wilson with an offensive line that is not any good. This is a winnable game. And you win games like this. I think Antonio Pierce, if he just gets this team in the mix, and I mean, they win this game, they'd be 5-5. And if he can get them around 9 wins, even if they miss the playoffs, I don't want to say he'd be a lock because I do think Mark Davis would be very interested in Jim Harbaugh. But I do think he wants to hire this guy, right? But you got to win to get hired, right? You got to win to get hired. And I do think the opportunity is there. And on the flip side, they're basically going through the same thing that they went through last year. The difference is when the season started, you had the hope with Aaron Rodgers, but that ended immediately. But you watch this Jets team, it's just the same shit over and over and over. Even the games they win, the games they lose, the Eagles games, they all kind of look the same. Just maybe they get the pick six or maybe they don't. But the offense, the putrid passing game, if you're betting on them, if you're a fan of the team, if you're just watching the game like myself and you just are just entertained, right, sitting on your couch, whenever he comes out and the offense rolls out, you have no faith. When they get multiple first downs in a drive, you are surprised. You have absolutely no faith that they can drive the field and get in like field goal range, let alone go on touchdown drives. So it's not Robert Saleh's fault that they made the move, but I do think that like this is the opposite, right? You start losing some of these games. The Charger game, what was that? Everyone was watching. This game, everyone was watching. And maybe he's getting next year no matter what because Rodgers is coming back off the injury. But you can already see like it's difficult. It's very, very difficult in the NFL to overcome not winning. You know, and no matter how much they like you, no matter how much they're paying you, because clearly, unlike Josh McDaniels, everyone likes Robert Saleh. He's an easy guy to like, high character, gets along with people, natural leader of men. People like the human being. But this is a bottom line business. Josh McDaniels could have been the biggest asshole in America. If he would have been going 11-5 or 11-6 and going to the playoffs every year, no one would have cared. Well, the players might have, but the owner and the fans would have all supported him. And if the Jets go under 500 again, it's like, well, where are we really going here? We're just keeping our fingers crossed that Aaron Rodgers, after listening to Dolphins have sex, that his Achilles can, be healed and fixed in 2024, and we're good. I wouldn't have great faith in that, especially when you play on a surface that everyone tears something at MetLife. Like he's just going to be fully healthy again next year. So it's tough. This game, Raiders Jets, you say it out loud. I'm fascinated by this. I can't wait for Sunday Night Football. Okay, let's get to a little thing we like to call the bold take of the week. And it's brought to you by my friends at Guinness. And I thought last week that the USC Trojans would lose and that Caleb Williams' career would end. And then when the visual came out of him crying with his mom and they lost, I thought, God, I thought he was crying because that's his last college football game. I was like, I nailed it. Turns out no, because technically they're still alive. They play Oregon this week. But I've been close. CJ Stroud is a lock for Rookie of the Year. And it's impossible, I would say, for a rookie quarterback to honestly look as good as he is, let alone to be like a Pro Bowl level guy. And CJ Stroud is just going to be in that mix. You go on the road as a big underdog against a team that I think we all acknowledge right now looks like currently these last couple of weeks the best team in the NFL in the Cincinnati Bengals. And they have one of the best quarterbacks, Jamar Chase, who got banged up from that fall. Higgins is now hurt. The defense, while led by a good coordinator, statistically has been giving up a lot of passing yards. What if CJ Stroud rolls in there, the Texans win that game, and he throws for like 3 touchdowns? And in a 2-week span, he's got 8 touchdowns, and they've just won a couple games, and they're like, God, are the Texans a potential wild card team? It would be on the table. Could CJ Stroud, he's not there yet. I'm not putting him, with the Burrows and the Lamars. You win a game like this when everyone's kind of paying attention, you throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, you get basically like, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns in over a 2-week span. You get your team into the playoff mix heading into the middle of November. Does he start getting some MVP buzz? So bold take of the week. I think the Texans roll in Cincinnati. CJ Stroud throws some touchdowns. They win. And we start talking about CJ Stroud like Pro Bowler, MVP. Buckle up, Texans fans. You guys would be well alive. That is my bold take. Brought to you by Guinness. Gather your friends, raise your glasses, and toast to a win. Guinness Stout, imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.